Hello everyone, please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our stories.
In the days when the world was still young and the wild places had not yet been tamed, the northern woods held secrets older than memory. It was a land where the snow did not merely fall, but arrived in great rolling drifts that seemed to swallow the world whole, and the wind shaped the trees into ancient sculptures. Among these pines and frozen rivers lived Paul Bunyan, a giant of both stature and heart, whose legend began with a rumble beneath the earth and a cry that startled the sky. Paul's life was one of quiet routine and gentle stewardship. Each morning, he would rise before the dawn, his great shadow cast long across the snow, and greet the woods with a song. Birds would gather in the branches, and even the shyest creatures would pause to listen, for Paul's voice was deep and kind, a sound that promised safety and warmth. He tended to the animals as if they were his kin, mending what storms had broken and ensuring that even the smallest life was cherished. Yet for all his kindness, Paul carried a loneliness as vast as the wilderness itself. It was not the loneliness of isolation, but of being apart, of existing on a scale that no other could match, of seeing the world from a height that made everything seem distant. He longed for companionship, for someone who could share in the wonders and burdens of his extraordinary life. But the forest, for all its ancient wisdom, offered him only silence in return. One afternoon, as winter held the land in its icy grip, Paul sensed a change in the air. The sky darkened to a shade of purple he had never seen, and the animals grew restless, their instincts warning of something unnatural. The wind shifted, carrying with it a scent of ozone and old magic, and Paul's heart quickened with anticipation. As twilight fell, the storm arrived, not with the familiar roar of thunder, but with a hiss that seemed to rise from the very roots of the earth. Blue lightning danced across the sky, illuminating the snowflakes as they fell, turning them into shimmering crystals. The forest, usually so full of life and sound, became eerily still, as if holding its breath. Paul knew the creatures would be frightened, so he took up his axe, a tool as mighty as himself, and ventured into the woods. He worked quickly, felling trees and building shelters, his movements swift and sure despite the howling storm. The wind tugged at his coat and tried to snatch his hat, but Paul paid it no mind. His concern was for the animals who depended on him. It was while gathering wood near a frozen creek that he noticed something strange. Beneath a drift of snow, a blue light flickered, pulsing gently like the heartbeat of a hidden star. Paul knelt and brushed the snow aside with his enormous hands, uncovering a sight that took his breath away. A calf, its fur the color of a summer sky after rain, lay shivering in the cold. Its eyes were wide and luminous, filled with both innocence and an ancient, unknowable wisdom. The calf was not heavy for Paul, but as he lifted it, a chill seeped into his bones, a cold deeper than any winter he had known. He wrapped the creature in a bearskin, cradling it gently as he made his way back through the storm. Each step he took left a mark in the snow that would not be erased, as if the earth itself wished to remember this journey. Inside his cabin, Paul built up the fire until it roared, filling the room with warmth and light. He mixed milk for the calf and sang to it in a low, soothing voice, using a melody he reserved for the loneliest nights. The storm raged on outside, rattling the windows and shaking the roof, but within those sturdy walls, a new kind of peace began to settle. As the firelight danced across the calf's blue fur, Paul watched in wonder. The creature's nose turned pink with warmth, and its breathing grew steady. Paul felt a connection to the calf that went beyond words, a sense that their meeting was both miraculous and destined. Morning brought a new surprise. The calf, which had fit easily in Paul's arms the night before, now stood as tall as a wagon, its legs long and sturdy. It moved with a playful energy, bounding around the cabin with a joy that was infectious. Paul laughed, a deep, booming sound that echoed through the woods, and realized that his life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. In the days that followed, the calf grew at an astonishing rate. Paul rebuilt his barn again and again, each time making it larger, but it was never enough. By the second week, the barn was little more than a memory, and Paul allowed the calf to roam freely. Wherever it went, the land seemed to awaken. Ice melted, grass pushed through the snow, and birds flocked to its side, singing songs of welcome. Paul named the calf Babe, a name that felt both familiar and new, as if it had been waiting for this moment to be spoken. Babe became Paul's constant companion, a friend who could match his stride and share in the wonders of the wild. Together they explored the vastness of the woods, discovering places even Paul had never seen. But as the days passed, Paul's curiosity grew. One night, as Babe slept by the fire, Paul noticed a faint symbol beneath the calf's blue fur, a circle enclosing a six-pointed star, glowing softly as if made of moonlight. Paul traced the symbol with a gentle finger, pondering its meaning. "Where did you come from, Babe?" he whispered into the quiet. Babe stirred in his sleep, letting out a low, contented bellow, as if dreaming of distant lands and forgotten realms. Paul knew then that Babe was more than a simple gift from the storm. The calf was a mystery, a messenger from a world beyond the ordinary, and their meeting was a sign of greater things to come. As the fire crackled and the storm's memory faded into the dawn, Paul felt a new sense of hope. For the first time, he was not alone, and together, he and Babe would face whatever wonders and challenges the future might hold. After that fateful storm, everything changed for Paul Bunyan. He was no longer just a solitary giant wandering the endless forests, carving rivers with each stride and shaping mountains with the swing of his mighty axe. Now, he had a companion, one as extraordinary as the world itself. Babe, the giant blue ox, was more than a friend. He was a miracle, a living legend in his own right, and together they became the heart and soul of the wild Northwoods. Babe was no ordinary ox. From the moment Paul found him shivering in a snowbank, his fur as blue as the morning sky, it was clear that Babe was touched by magic. He grew faster than the tallest pine, his strength matched only by his gentle intelligence. Babe could sniff out the difference between a healthy tree and one rotten to the core, and sometimes, when the mood struck, he'd tap out a rhythm with his horns, creating a beat for Paul to sing to as he chopped wood. The two of them were inseparable, and wherever they went, stories grew like wildflowers in their wake. It wasn't long before the people of Willow Pines came seeking their help. The Gray Wind River, lifeblood of the region, had changed its course after a strange and violent earthquake. Now the water flooded the swamps, bringing with it poisonous snakes and killing all the fish. The land was dying and the people were desperate. Without hesitation, Paul and Babe set out. For 3 days and nights they journeyed across mountains capped with snow, through forests so thick with ice that each step rang out like a bell. At last, they reached the river, only to find it twisted and tormented, the water swirling as if pulled by unseen hands. Trees trembled on the banks, and a black slick of oil floated on the surface, thick and foul as monster's tar. Babe bellowed, a sound so deep it seemed to shake the very bones of the earth. The water shuddered, and from its depths rose a creature of nightmares, an ancient water snake, long as 5 train cars, with eyes that glowed red in the gloom. At once, Paul knew this was the force that had bent the river to its will. The battle was fierce. Paul swung his axe, felling trees that blocked the river's flow, while Babe used his mighty tail to lash at the serpent, driving it from the mud. The snake coiled and struck, but together, man and ox stood firm. With a final thunderous stomp, Babe cracked the earth, opening a new channel for the water. Paul and Babe rolled boulders into place, guiding the river back to its rightful course. The serpent, defeated, slipped away into the shadows, never to be seen again. The people returned to find the river restored, its banks lined with fresh grass and wildflowers. Where Babe had stomped, the ground formed a great impression, a mark so vast it could be seen from the highest hill. The locals called it the Blue Dragon's footprint, but everyone knew it was Babe's doing. a miracle wrought by friendship and courage. As autumn painted the woods in gold and crimson, a new mystery arose. East of the redwood, a strange mist crept in, swallowing the trees and silencing the birds. The animals vanished, and those who ventured too deep reported hearing voices, soft whispers in a language older than time, luring the unwary ever deeper. Paul and Babe ventured into the fog, their every step muffled by the thick, swirling mist. The world grew eerily silent, the only sound their own breathing and the distant haunting call of something lost. The wind whispered their names, not in any human tongue, but in the language of dreams. They pressed on, guided by a faint, pitiful cry. At the base of a petrified tree, they found a boy, shivering and wide-eyed. He spoke of a figure in a cloak of frost, who had invited him to play a game that never ended, a game that stole time and memory. Suddenly, the Mist Guardian appeared, tall and imposing, his face hidden behind a mask carved from ancient wood. His eyes gleamed with the light of forgotten dreams, and he moved with the silence of falling snow. He reached for the boy, but Paul stepped between them, his shadow vast and unyielding. Babe roared, a sound that parted the mist like sunlight, and the dead trees seemed to shiver awake. The Mist Guardian hesitated, his form flickering like a candle in the wind. For a moment, the air was thick with the scent of old memories and broken promises. Then, with a sigh that echoed through the ages, he faded away, the mist dissolving with him. In his absence, the forest bloomed anew. The blind woods, once a place of fear and sorrow, transformed into a fragrant cedar grove, alive with bird song and laughter. The boy returned home, and the people spoke in awe of Paul and Babe, whose courage had brought light to the darkest corner of the woods. When summer came, it brought with it a terrible drought. The streams dried up and the animals wandered in search of water, their eyes hollow with thirst. Paul watched the suffering of the land, his heart heavy. He turned to Babe, laying a gentle hand on his friend's massive shoulder. "Can we create a miracle like we did before?" he asked. Babe nodded, his eyes shining with faith. Together, they set to work. Paul swung his axe, carving a basin in the earth, while Babe raked the ground with his antlers, shaping the land with careful precision. They worked day and night, their sweat soaking the parched soil. At last, when the basin was deep and wide, Babe let out a mighty roar. The ground trembled and water burst forth from underground springs, filling the lake with crystal-clear water. The animals returned, drinking their fill, and the forest came alive once more. The people named it Bunyan's Great Lake, a place where the water was always cool and clear, reflecting the sky like a mirror. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the hardest times, miracles were possible. At the end of each day, when the work was done, Paul and Babe would rest beneath the tallest tree in the forest. Paul would lean back, gazing up at the stars, while Babe curled up beside him, a gentle hill of blue fur. Paul would tell stories of the constellations, of shooting stars and distant worlds, his voice soft as the night breeze. Babe would listen, his warm breath melting the last traces of mist. And in that peaceful silence, the two friends found a happiness deeper than any river, brighter than any star. Together, Paul and Babe became legends, not just for their strength, but for their kindness, their courage, and the unbreakable bond they shared. In the heart of the wild woods where miracles grew as tall as trees, their story lived on, whispered by the wind and remembered in every shimmering drop of water, every rustling leaf, and every star that watched over the world they loved. In the earliest hours of an autumn morning, when the world was still wrapped in a silvery mist and the hills seemed to float above the sleeping land, Paul awoke to a presence at his window. There, perched on the sill, was a black eagle, its feathers glistening with dew, its eyes sharp and knowing. This was no ordinary bird. In the legends of the land, the black eagle only appeared when hope hung by a thread, when the world teetered on the edge of a shadow that could not be lifted by ordinary means. Paul approached with quiet reverence, and the eagle extended its talon, clutching a letter sealed with wax and marked by an unfamiliar crest. The paper trembled in his hands as he broke the seal and read the message, written in a script that wavered as if the writer's very soul had been shaken. From the far west, the forests are rotting, the soil is barren, the clouds bring no rain. We need the giant and the blue cow, or all will be lost. Paul's face grew solemn, but he did not hesitate. He turned to his companion, Babe, the mighty blue ox, whose hide shimmered with the color of deep lakes and whose eyes held the calm wisdom of ancient forests. With a silent nod, Paul signaled the start of a journey that would test the limits of legend. They set out across the land, their silhouettes tall against the rising sun, moving toward a horizon that seemed to recede with every step. Their first trial awaited them at the Thundering Plains, a place whispered about in stories, where the wind blew without direction and the earth trembled as if restless spirits stirred beneath. As dusk fell, the plains grew uneasy. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with a strange, pulsing shadow. Beneath their feet, the ground began to rumble. Not the gentle roll of distant thunder, but a deep, living growl that vibrated through bone and soul. Babe's ears flicked nervously and Paul gripped his axe, every sense alert. Suddenly the earth erupted. From the soil burst the rottenwoods, twisted remnants of forgotten forests, their trunks blackened and their roots writhing like the claws of ancient beasts. Each time Paul swung his axe, sparks flew and branches shattered, but the rottenwoods healed, their wounds closing as quickly as they opened. Babe charged, her hooves sending the creatures flying, but still they returned, relentless as the night. Then, with a roar that echoed to the heavens, Babe summoned the dawn. The sky split, and a shaft of sunlight poured down, burning away the darkness that clung to the rottenwoods. In that golden light, the creatures withered at last, their forms dissolving into gentle ash. The Thundering Plains grew still, but Paul knew this was only the beginning. The land's wounds ran deeper than any battle could heal. They pressed onward, and the landscape changed. The vibrant grasses gave way to the cracked expanse of the forgotten desert, a place where nothing grew and the sun ruled without mercy. The people they found there were shadows of themselves, huddled in the meager shelter of tattered tents. Their eyes were hollow, their voices dry as dust. Paul dug with his axe, seeking water, but the land was cursed. Each strike yielded only a hollow clack, as if the earth itself had forgotten the taste of rain. Babe, sensing something beneath the surface, stomped her hooves 3 times. With each stomp, the ground trembled, and on the third, a deep gurgle rose from below. Suddenly, a fountain of blue water erupted, sparkling in the harsh sunlight. The people gathered, awestruck as the water spread, forming a lake where only sand had been. Within hours, green shoots broke through the soil, and birds returned, their songs weaving hope into the air. The oasis flourished, and the people named it the Well of the Blue Cow, raising a statue in Babe's honor, a reminder that miracles could spring even from the driest earth. With the desert behind them, Paul and Babe reached the edge of a canyon so deep it seemed to swallow light itself. This was the throat of the winds, where caravans vanished, and the wind was said to carry away the unwary. There was no bridge, no path, only the endless howl of spirits lost to the abyss. Paul listened to the wind, hearing not just its fury, but its sorrow, the longing of souls seeking home. With resolve, he drove his axe into the ground and called upon Babe. Together they gathered the white wood from the magical trees atop Windy Mountain, timber that would bend but never break. Babe braced herself in the heart of the canyon, holding the bridge steady as Paul worked, his hands raw and bleeding, his determination unwavering. For 3 days and nights, the wind battered them, tearing at their clothes and skin. But they endured, and when the final plank was set, a white light broke through the clouds and the wind softened, as if soothed by a mother's lullaby. They crossed the bridge, leaving behind the cries of the lost and carrying with them a peace that settled over the canyon like a blessing. At last, they reached the far west, The land was as the letter had warned. Forests blackened, earth split and lifeless. But Paul was undaunted. He set to work, burying roots and planting seeds, while Babe touched each trunk with her horns, sending pulses of green energy into the soil. Slowly, life returned. Trees unfurled new leaves, flowers bloomed in riotous color, and the earth itself seemed to breathe again. People gathered from every corner of the land, drawn by the miracle. They celebrated with music and laughter, children riding on Babe's broad back, their joy echoing through the reborn forest. Paul sat by the campfire, his deep voice recounting their journey, the dangers faced, the darkness overcome, and the hope restored. As the festival faded into the quiet of night, Babe gazed at the sky, where a blue star had fallen beyond the horizon. Paul rested a hand on her head, his voice soft but certain. Our journey isn't over, old friend. There are still lands waiting for us, places where hope sleeps beneath the surface, waiting for a giant and a blue cow to awaken it. Babe answered with a low, rumbling call, a promise that wherever darkness lingered, they would answer. And so, beneath the endless sky, the legend of Paul and Babe continued. A story of courage, renewal, and the unbreakable bond between a giant and his faithful friend. In the far reaches of the northern woods, where the trees grow taller than church steeples and the snow falls in thick, silent blankets, stories have a way of lingering longer than footprints. Here, legends are not just told, they are felt, whispered on the wind and etched into the bones of the earth itself. Among these legends, none is more enduring or mysterious than that of Paul Bunyan and Babe, the mighty blue ox. It is said that Paul and Babe did not simply vanish into the pages of old storybooks. Instead, they found their rest atop the misty mountain, a peak so shrouded in cloud and secrecy that no map can truly capture its location. Some say the mountain moves, hiding itself from those who seek it for selfish reasons, revealing its path only to the pure of heart and the brave of spirit. Here, amidst unending snow and swirling mists, Paul and Babe sleep, guardians of the ancient wilds, their dreams shaping the world below. On a night when the wind howled with unusual fury, rattling the shutters of a small village nestled at the forest's edge, a little girl named Mira witnessed something extraordinary. As the storm battered her home, a single scrap of paper tumbled in through the open window, coming to rest atop her favorite book. A collection of Paul Bunyan's tales, worn at the corners from many readings. The note was old, the ink faded, but the words were clear. When the world begins to forget, legends sleep. But if real danger comes near, they wake up. No sooner had Mira read these words than the earth itself seemed to respond. The floor trembled beneath her feet, and from the depths of the forest came a sound. Long, low, smooth, that vibrated through the night, distant yet unmistakable. It was as if the mountain itself was stirring. Mira knew in her heart that something important was about to change. The next morning, with the wind still whispering secrets among the trees, Mira shared the note with her grandfather. He was an old man, a storyteller whose memories stretched back as far as the village itself. Together, they pored over a battered old map, one marked with strange symbols, an axe, an ox hoof, signs that only a true believer would recognize. Without hesitation, they decided to set out, following the call of the legend. Their journey took them deep into the heart of the forest, past streams that sang with the ghostly echoes of axes chopping wood, though no one could be seen. The forest seemed alive with memory, every rustle and creak a reminder that they were not alone. As they walked, they encountered a white fox, its fur gleaming in the dappled light. To their astonishment, the fox spoke in a voice as clear as any human's. Giants do not sleep, they only listen. A little further on, they came upon a tree so old and vast that its roots seemed to cradle the earth itself. As they paused in its shade, the tree exhaled a gentle breath, the air warm and sweet. "To find the legend," it whispered, "you must believe in what no one else believes." Encouraged by these encounters, Mira and her grandfather pressed on, eventually arriving at the Silent Valley. Here the world seemed to hold its breath. No birds sang, no wind stirred the air. In the center of the valley stood a massive rock, unmistakably shaped like a cow's hoof. Mira approached, her heart pounding with hope and fear. She placed her small hand upon the stone, and in that instant, the snow began to melt, revealing a hidden staircase spiraling down into the earth. They descended into the mountain's heart, entering a cavern vast as a cathedral. The walls were carved with scenes of Paul and Babe's legendary deeds, bridges spanning impossible chasms, forests cleared with a single swing of Paul's axe, lakes scooped from the earth by Babe's mighty hooves. At the center of the cave stood two colossal statues, Paul, his silver axe gleaming against his chest, and Babe, a star-shaped stone set into her broad forehead. Yet it was their eyes that drew Mira's gaze, bright and alive, as if watching, waiting. Her grandfather bowed his head, his voice reverent and solemn. Sleep well, guardians. When the world needs you, we will call your names with faith, not with noise. As his words faded into the hush of the cave, a warm wind rose from the mountain's core. It swept through the cavern, up the staircase, and out into the valley, melting the ice and coaxing green buds from the frozen branches. Above, the villagers marveled as winter seemed to retreat, if only for a moment. That night, as the village gathered around their fires, strange tales were told. Some claimed to have heard the thunderous footsteps of a giant crossing the snowy fields, leaving behind ponds where his boots had pressed. A child awoke with a memory of soaring through the clouds on Babe's back, laughter like thunder rolling all around. An old man, long deaf to the world's clamor, whispered that he had heard the unmistakable ring of an axe, this time not against wood, but echoing from the darkness itself. From that day forward, the village changed. Every year, on the first windy day, the children would climb the nearest hill, leaving a honey cake for Babe and gathering to share stories of Paul's adventures. For they understood now what the old note meant. Legends only truly sleep when no one remembers them. As long as a single story is told, as long as a single child believes, the guardians will never truly fade. And so, when the earth trembles and the wind howls through the trees, the villagers know to look up, toward the mountain, whose peak is forever lost in cloud. For it is there, in the heart of the storm, that Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox wait, ready to return when the world needs them most, carrying with them the strength of stars,